All right, fans, one more time here on the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks, folks. And hey, welcome back, folks, to the two-man show of record in a new role, folks. The guys with the petition back here on the network block of shows. Here right now on the LA Sparks 365 Network here alongside Chris Mancy at the Anaheim Studios up in Anaheim, California. Kyle McClure will be joining me, folks, here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris, this is different. The petition show's back, man, but we're in a new role now. We're talking about the season, not the petition. How's it going?
Not much, just species because someone's probably watching our show.
Folks, in case you're wondering, the last show, the link was tweeted to Magic Johnson. So we're a bit frazzled right now, folks, of the last viewer we had, which was not me, because normally, folks, I do watch the show, too, on my computer to make sure that it's running fine and also to watch the time of the show, too, because we try to go for about 25 or 30 minutes here, folks. But I didn't watch that last show, so it could very well, folks, be the Magic Man himself. So we'll see what occurs later on, folks. But folks, we are very happy to have the two-man show of record back, which is the guys with the petition here, folks. But again, the petition show in a new role, folks, coming off the bench here. Not talking petition effort, folks. Now talking about the season. And tonight, we folks, also during the season, we're going to kind of break down some weird things. You know, either break down some weird plays, some weird rules, some off-the-wall topics here, kind of. Where tonight, folks, we're going to be talking about our take on the marquee-sponsored WNBA jerseys. Now, for the folks out there that are wondering, the Phoenix Mercury, folks, were the first club and franchise to go to the jersey, sort of what you see behind me now as I change the back over, folks, kind of a little Vanna White style over here, just kind of show you guys this. Wheel of Fortune fan over here, 7 o'clock on NBC7 down here every night. But you can tell, folks, at least, that the jersey that the Sparks had in 2009 to 2012 was sponsored by Farmers Insurance. We are farmers, bum, 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 bum. But, folks, coming off of what occurred in 2012, the Sparks and the insurance company broke off their ties with the sponsorship, leaving a few teams out there in the WNBA, Phoenix, Tulsa, New York, Indiana, and a few other teams that do have jerseys similar to that style where it's not the team name, it's a sponsor across their jersey tops. Chris, when the Mercury first went to the new jerseys of having the company sponsor when they had LifeLock for a long time, I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting, to say the least, that a league would do this. But at the same time, I mean, it really wasn't like the same sort of feel to the jersey that, you know, you're representing the, you're more so, Chris, playing for the club or playing for the sponsor, not really playing for the franchise or the team name, Chris. So Chris, when you first started watching the WNBA last year, and you saw like the Storm and the Mercury have either, you know, LifeLock or Bing or Finish Line on the jersey, what was kind of your first initial reaction to those jerseys?
Just like terrible, because they're like pretty much like not even playing for the franchise. They're like pretty much playing for the sponsors.
Chris, I don't think it was a terrible idea because I think, Chris, the WNBA knows that it's not financially sustainable, and if teams have the jersey sponsor, that also is more money and incentives towards them, Chris. Again, I'm kind of peeking at the jersey in the right corner of my screen right now, folks. Right now, behind me here, because I kind of flipped from the back to the front here for the show here. But Chris, in my view, I mean, I didn't really have a problem with it. It's just that I think it was a little too heavy on the advertising. Now, Chris, we know about the NBA is going to the same style, but not like what you're seeing now, Chris. It's going to be probably a little patch like this, or like the Adidas one, where it's going to be a little small one in the top corner and still have a team name, Chris. Chris, I think looking at this year right now, the team that got it right was the San Antonio Stars. So they still have, Chris, their team name across their top, and they have the jersey below their, they have the sponsor below their numbers, which is HEB, their local supermarket down there in the San Antonio, Fort Worth, Dallas area. Chris, I mean, initially when the Mercury first went to it again, I really wasn't like, you know, taken back by it. I thought it was cool and all that, a company had the wherewithal to sponsor a WNBA franchise, because at the same time, again, it's not really like the same sort of feel putting on like my soccer's jersey, which also has a sponsor because it's a soccer team, which is, that's obvious. But I mean, it's not like putting on like a Angels jersey or a Charger jersey or a hockey jersey where you don't have the advertisement, Chris. But I mean, I think though, Chris, that the teams realize that if they do form these partnerships, like the Mercury with Casino Arizona and Talking Stick, the Stars with HEB, the Fever with Finish Line, and when the Storm had Bing, and New York had Foxwoods Casino, and the Sparks had Farmers Insurance. Chris, is I think when that happens though, I think when that happens, I think the company puts some profit towards the teams. And Chris, about the league is not really financially sustainable, Chris. And I think, though, man, it's good, though, to see, though, that there are companies out there, like Farmers, like Foxwoods and Casino Arizona, Chris, that are willing, Chris, to spend their money on a WNBA franchise, Chris, knowing about the obstacles the league has to overcome every day to get people in the building, to get on television like they were today on ESPN2. I mean, Chris, I don't think it's really like a travesty that teams have gone this route. But at the same time, it's not really the same feel that Chris, you're wearing the jersey that has Los Angeles, not really wearing the one that has Farmers across it, man. But in your view, though, man, do you believe, though, perhaps now, Chris, about the NBA going this route, following their little sisters in WNBA, Chris? The NBA D League also does it too, Chris, where they have a sponsor across the bottom part of their jersey, kind of like like the Stars do below the number. But Chris, do you believe that any other pro league? I've also, Chris, heard the NFL possibly doing this too. Do you think that more and more sporting leagues might follow suit, Chris, and start putting ads on their jerseys?
Probably. It probably will.
And Chris, I have to kind of disagree with you, man, but I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think it's actually, Chris, more of a good way for a team to have a sponsor on their jersey in some fashion. Now, Chris, about soccer. They have advertisements, on their fronts, on their asses, on their backs, all over the place, Chris. They're like walking billboards. So are minor league hockey teams, Chris. I mean, a few ads Chris, maybe one or two ads, maybe. But anything over two, I'm not big on. Now, the Sockers, Chris, we have two. We have Boney Acai on our front and Cox Communications on our lower backs. So that's pretty good, Chris. But I think, though, man, I think it's going to happen eventually that more and more pro leagues are going to go to some form of a small advertisement, Chris. Now, we know the NBA is probably going to do it, Chris, sometime soon. Chris, do you think, though, that this is more so, it's not really like a PR snafu, but do you think, though, that when companies put their ads, not just on, like, the scoreboard or the floor or on the outfield walls at baseball games, though, but, Chris, they have it on the jersey, though. Do you think, though, that that helps the company more so that they're seeing it, that the players are wearing the company's name, and that will give that company more business, basically?
I think, yeah, because since it's on the player's jersey, and when people buy buy jerseys, it also have it on there, and it'll buy that company even more.
Chris, again, man, kind of going back to what he said about being terrible, and again, I don't think it was really a terrible idea when the Mercury were the first team to go to the sponsorship. They had a great company too, Chris, in LifeLock, who is really, if you folks need LifeLock, I would suggest you use it, folks, because it really has helped my family protect our identity from thieves and fraud. And then, Chris, the Sparks go to Farmers Insurance. You got Bing up there in Seattle. You had Foxwoods Casino with New York. The Connecticut Sun, Chris, are basically sponsored by the Mohegan Sun Indian tribe. Phoenix with LifeLock. The Stars down with HEB. The Tulsa Shock sponsored by Osage Casino down there, Chris. So, it's not really, man, like it's a bad thing, but it's more so, again, not only, putting the sponsor on the jersey, but again, Chris, it's also more so about the company getting revenue, but also, Chris, I think with the WNBA doing this, being the first league other than MLS to do this with the sponsor, that again, man, it helps drive business towards that company. And again, the Sparks had Farmers for a while, man. The Sparks, caught on to their little "We Are Farmers" bum 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 advertisement with the hashtag of "We Are Sparks" on Twitter, which we still use to this day, even though Farmers doesn't sponsor anymore. But again, man, you know, again, I don't really have a problem at all. I mean, it's different to say the least, though, Chris, that we have teams that have the sponsors across their jerseys. But at the same time, man, I don't see a problem with it at all, man. I mean, I mean, Chris, you know, I wear a soccer jersey that has a company ad on the front. I've got the oversized one that I hang now here for shits and giggles and to kind of spruce up the studio here that has the farmer's ad, Chris. But I mean, I mean, Chris, you know, I'm actually fine wearing a jersey that has a company advertisement on it, Chris. Whether it's Farmers Insurance, Budweiser, you know, Dasani water that I always drink here during shows, or, you know, Chris, you know, I mean, I don't see though, Chris, because some fans have kind of voiced their opinion about, you know, why, you know, I'm not going to buy a jersey because it has the advertisement on it, Chris. But I mean, it's still a jersey. I mean, last I checked, Chris, a jersey is a jersey, whether it's got Los Angeles or We Are Farmers, bum across it, man. But I mean, Chris, you know, what's your stance right now, though, on the marquee sponsor jerseys?
They're kind of great because it just brings more money for the sponsors that they're playing for.
I mean, Chris, it is certainly different though that there's two pro leagues that do have sponsorship advertisements on their jerseys, which would be the WNBA and Major League Soccer. Where, Chris, now the WNBA has the entire league now has the Boost Mobile sponsorship across all parts of the bottom of their jerseys, since Boost Mobile's invested a lot of money in the WNBA, as has State Farm Insurance. But Chris, again, you know, I would not be surprised though if other pro leagues follow suit here sometime soon with either something like that, or even, Chris, like what Adam Silver said in the next 5 years, you know, a small little advertisement patch. Because Chris, I don't know if you've seen this though, man. But some football teams, the Chargers, the Patriots, Chris, have a small little decal on their practice jerseys across the top left shoulder, like the Chargers have UCSD Medical Center. The Patriots have Gillette razors and Gillette men products, Chris. So, again, you know, I'll say it one more time, Chris, but it is different to adore a jersey with a sponsor on it, Chris. But at the same time, a jersey's still a jersey, man. And I kind of actually, Chris, want to compare, or Chris, I want to actually, you know, when we go to our Sparks game on the 22nd, I want to take a poll, Chris, kind of like Family Feud, a little survey of 100 random Sparks fans and ask them if they would buy a jersey if they currently do or they did, or actually what I'm trying to say here is, you know, Chris, is take a random poll of 100 Sparks fans at the game we go to on the 22nd and ask them, if the Sparks went to another advertised jersey, would they buy it, yes or no? Chris, I think it might be split 50-50. I think, though, it might be people not buying the jersey because of the advertisement on it, because it's not really the same sort of feel as wearing an actual jersey that just, you know, reads Los Angeles or Sparks on it, Chris. But, Chris, if you were to answer that survey question, would you buy a jersey with a team with a company ad on it, yes or no? What would you do? I mean, what would you say and why? And would you ever buy a jersey for any team that if they ever had an advertisement on their jersey?
Yes, because it's still the same team, even though it has a sponsor on it. It's still, example, it's still the Sparks, and I'll still buy it even though it has a sponsor on it.
Chris, Shorty Mamba 24, you know, our one of our best friends from our Sparks fam on Twitter. We recently, Chris, had a little off-air hangout a couple nights ago about, and this kind of came about the sponsorship ads and Shorty and Chris. And Shorty brought up, though, do you ever think that the Sparks would go back to having a sponsor? Chris, I think they would. And I have two suggestions here. Knowing what we've seen with the Shock and the Liberty going to the Indian tribal casinos like Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun with the Sun and O'Shea and down there in Tulsa, is, Chris, I could either see Morongo Casino, who sponsors the Sparks, or your favorite place to go to, I guess, on Twitter, apparently, San Manuel Indian Bingo and Casino, Chris, also sponsoring, because it seems like, Chris, and what I've seen, too, down here in San Diego, man, with the Padres, the Chargers, and San Diego State basketball, is our Indian tribes down here are so giving. Viejas and Sequana are two giving partners in the community, Chris, and also is Valley View Casino, who's now sponsors the arena down here, Chris. But Saquon has sponsored the Padres for the last 20 years. And they've also sponsored the Chargers for a long time. And, of course, Chris, Viejas Casino out here has their name on the San Jose State basketball gym, Viejas Arena. And, of course, Chris, Valley View Casino also sponsors the sports unit down here, Chris. So I think, Chris, the Sparks, I think, would be better off if they ever went back to an ad, Chris, of a tribal casino, Chris, because it seems like, man, the tribes are very, very community-driven, Chris, and they will, Chris, give their money to a pro franchise like the Sparks, Chris. I mean, if you look back at the Liberty and the Sun and the Shock, Chris, all three of those tribes, Chris, have given some funds to the Shock, Chris, and to the Shock and Liberty and them, Chris, and you know, seeing it firsthand down here, man. The tribes down here are just really, really giving, Chris. Barona Casino down here also sponsors the international baseball team that I announced for when I go across the world, Chris. So I think if the Sparks ever went back to a company ad, Chris, I think it would be either your favorite place, San Manuel, or possibly Morongo Casino, Chris. But, I mean, you know, Chris, you know, if you had to think of some company, you know, Staples, Verizon, you know, somebody that sponsors the arena or the Sparks, other than what I just said, someone other than what I just said, Chris, who do you think would be willing to put their ads on the Sparks jerseys other than San Manuel or Morongo?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe Staples. Maybe.
Staples, maybe. I mean, that's a long shot, but again, they do sponsor the arena, Chris. I mean, hey, why not Time Warner Cable Sportsnet? They have a lot of their ads. I mean, they have their ad on the court along the bench line, so that's a possibility. But again, Chris, we're probably gonna have to do that. We're gonna take a random survey of 100 fans that the Sparks are gonna go to and just ask them, hey, if the Sparks went back to having a advertisement on their jersey, would you buy the jersey with it on their yay or nay? And we'll just go from there, man. But again, Chris, you know, I think the WNBA, though, Chris, has done a good job with their sponsorship. Between Boost Mobile and State Farm, they've been two great partners with the WNBA over the past year or so, putting their money in ads on on ESPN and NBA TV. Chris, of course, with some of the teams that have their sponsorship with their sponsors on their jerseys, man. But again, Chris, you know, man, going back to our first point here again, do you believe, though, that sometime soon that other pro leagues might follow suit with some sort of ads on their jerseys in the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps at all?
Probably, yeah.
Because, Chris, I used to go to a lot of the old San Diego Gulls hockey games down here when they were around from 2001 from 95 till 2005. And, Chris, they had a advertisement on their jersey top in the top right from Barona Casino because they were a big sponsor of the Gulls. And then, Chris, they had sponsors basically all across the ice, from where you normally see where they have the 4 along the blue lines. They had 2 along the blue line and then a few in the face-off circle, Chris. So it looked like a big-ass billboard. But, Chris, you know, it's more – I mean, the reason why, Chris, I brought up this topic tonight, Chris, is, you know, it seems like, Chris, that the teams actually profit from the companies of having the ads on there, Chris. And again, if there's that bridge between a company and a team, you know, they either sponsor the jersey or they sponsor something during the game, or they sponsor, you know, the game night or whatever, Chris. Like Chris, I see a lot with the Galaxy. They have different sponsors for each game on the schedule. Like M&M's was yesterday. I think El Torito's next, and I think Alaska Airlines is next after that, Chris. But I think, man, when you have companies that come in and they either sponsor the jersey top, like Herbalife with the Galaxy, or, you know, Quaker Oatmeal with the Chicago Fire, you know, is not only does the company profit, Chris, but also the big picture, man, is that when the company sponsors, like Farmers do with the Sparks, Chris, is that helps keep that team afloat, barring an ownership change, like we saw this past offseason or whatever happens. But again, Chris, and we're going to wrap up here pretty soon, man, but, you know, I think the jersey sponsorship, Chris, I think has done its job so far. You know, when Seattle had theirs and L.A. and New York had theirs, Chris, and I think with Phoenix and San Antonio and Tulsa and Indiana and, you know, Connecticut and all the teams, Chris, that do have an ad on there, it seems to have helped in some fashion that there has been some sort of problem with the ownership group or whatever. But it seems like though, Chris, that there is that bridge gap. That bridge, that gap is bridged over by both sides of the story, Chris. And again, man, this was a topic that came to my head earlier today about we should talk about the jerseys and our thoughts on it. But again, Chris, before we get out of the night, man, what are your thoughts though about the teams that have their jerseys that have sponsors on them?
Very great that they have sponsors. Then they could get more, bring in more money for that team that sponsors them.
I mean, Chris, it isn't a PR snafu like it was with the U.S. Arena soccer team inviting Landon Donovan to training for the Arena World Cup in February, Chris. That's a PR snafu. What the teams do with their jersey sponsors is not a PR snafu, Chris. It's basically that company and that franchise wanting to work together, like Farmers and the Sparks did, Chris, for a few years. And Farmers, Chris, did their due diligence. Okay, they had the little "We Are Sparks" hashtag on Twitter. They had their ad on the court. They had, the jersey sponsor, like you see back here on my surfboard and stuff, man. And Farmers did a good job, man. I mean, they had ads with Sparks players in them. They had the jersey sponsor. They had their advertisement on the floor. The "We Are Sparks" bum hashtag on Twitter, Chris. So, I mean, it's not necessarily, Chris, a bad thing that teams do this. Yeah. It's more. It's strange to say the least, Chris, that you would be putting on a jersey and you're playing for Farmers Insurance, not playing for LA Sparks. We're playing for Casino Arizona at Talking Stick, not for the Phoenix Mercury. But at the same time, though, Chris, it's the same deal. I mean, you're playing for your team. But, Chris, you're not just playing for that team. Chris, I look at it this way. Is you're playing the game for your team, but you're also like a spokesperson or an employee of that company. So, Parker, Chris, is playing for the Sparks, but at the same time being a spokesperson and being an employee of Farmers Insurance, Chris. That's the way I see it, man. I don't know about you. But, Chris, our last question again before we get out of here for the night, we're going to actually, Chris, also pose this to the fans on Twitter as well. Because, again, Chris, one more time, do you believe that other pro sports leagues will follow suit and start putting some advertisements on their unis sometime very soon?
Yep.
I think we all agree, folks. So with that, folks, we are glad to be back here, folks, on the Guys with the Petition here, folks, our two-man show of record in a brand new role, talking WNBA and LA Sparks basketball. And again, Chris, we have a viewer here. I think that's me, though. But, Chris, we have a viewer again. We had a viewer the last show, too, man. Is the heart rate pounding? Is it going up? Is the blood pressure levels rising? Is your arteries getting clogged, man? What are you thinking about right now with these people watching us right now?
I think it's either my heart's pounding because I think it's Magic Johnson.
It very well could be, folks. We'll see what occurs out of it. But again, folks, we had one viewer the entire Sparks Fam show. It wasn't me because I had YouTube closed, but we had one viewer on the entire Sparks Fam show. So, folks, we'll see what occurs. But, folks, until tomorrow night when we rejoin you folks here back at 9 o'clock p.m., this has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. Chris, thanks for all the help, man. I'm off to finish the site, get it posted hopefully sometime soon. So we'll see you off air for the next, I don't know, half an hour or so, man. So thanks for coming out and see you tomorrow night.
Thanks, and he's probably gonna tweet right when the thing just.
Okay, Magic, we're waiting if you're going to tweet to us after the show, folks. But until tomorrow night, folks, have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thank you for coming, and good night. Now, this has been the LA Sparks 365 Network here, folks. Your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion LA Sparks. We'll see you folks tomorrow night right here on the LA Sparks 365 Network here, folks. We are Sparks. We are LA. So long, everybody. See you folks tomorrow night. Bye-bye.